Novosibirsk, a city in Russia, was gripped by terror as a serial killer left a trail of horror in its wake. Between 1998 and 2005, this killer murdered at least 19 sex workers in the Novosibirsk region. The brutality of these murders was so horrifying that it would send chills down your spine. Police often did not recover entire bodies, but instead found dismembered parts, hands, legs, heads, and other body parts scattered across desolate locations. If the head of a victim was found, the torso would be missing, and if the torso was discovered, the head would be gone. In some cases, the killer even carved out the victims' hearts after slitting their chests. Adding to the horror, the killer etched arrows and pentagrams on the victim's skin, as if sending a chilling message with each murder. But that wasn't all. At every crime scene, strange and terrifying objects were left behind, hinting at some ritual or mysterious tradition. The bodies were never hidden. Instead, they were placed in locations where they could be easily found, almost as if the killer wanted his gruesome crimes to be on display for the world to see. Despite extensive investigations and multiple arrests by the police, this serial killer was finally apprehended in 2016. Who was this serial killer? What was their story? And how did they eventually fall into the hands of the police? You'll find out all of this in today's video. But before we begin, if you're visiting our channel for the first time, make sure to subscribe to our channel, as you'll find true crime stories here. Now let's dive into the story. In December 1998, the police discovered the body of the first victim. The body bore signs of severe torture, with arrows and star symbols carved into the skin. Near the crime scenes, various amulets were also found. Investigators could not agree on whether the murders were part of some ritualistic practice or if the perpetrator used these symbols to mislead the authorities. The condition of the body was so horrific that identification was nearly impossible. To this day, the victim's identity remains unknown. Her relatives were never located, and despite attempts to reconstruct her face and genetic profile, her true identity could never be confirmed. In all official documents, she is referred to as woman number 1 inch. The police were still investigating the case when another body was discovered. In 1999, the police found the partial remains of 19-year-old Yevgenia S., a sex worker. She was last seen on January 2, 1999. Some of her remains were discovered 5 days later, while the rest of her body parts were found on April 19, 1999. After this, the police discovered yet another body. On May 27, 1999, the severed head of the third victim was found. Only the head was recovered, and the rest of the body was never located. The identity of this victim remains unknown, and investigators refer to her as woman number 3 inches in official records. The police were finding bodies and body parts at various locations, but they still had no evidence about the killer. There were no witnesses, and the killer was very clever. He left no evidence behind and had no witnesses who could lead the police to him. While the police were still working on the cases of the first 3 murders, they received a report of another body. Victim number 4. On October 18, 1999, a body was discovered with its head missing. The victim's identity remains unknown to this day. Nearby, a spot was found where a fire had been lit, and pieces of both men's and women's clothing were scattered. These pieces of clothing eventually became crucial evidence against the killer. The discovery of bodies continued relentlessly. Initially, the police believed these were separate cases. However, when they analyzed the method of killing, they realized that it was the work of a serial killer. Despite thorough investigations and questioning people, the police could not find any clues. In the meantime, the police discovered yet another body. On November 2, 1999, the body of 28-year-old Svetlana A. was found. She was a sex worker and had a drug addiction. A missing person report for her was filed on October 2, 1999. Her body showed signs of torture, broken bones, and several knife wounds. Her head had been severed, and she had been sexually assaulted. Semen traces were found on her body, which investigators collected as DNA evidence. As with previous victims, the attacker had left used condoms near her body. The discovery of bodies continued through the end of 2003. The police kept finding bodies and body parts. Then, a new year, 2004 began. The details of the victims from 2000 to the end of 2003 will be provided at the end of the video. On May 10, 2004, the body of Irina P. was found. The condition of the body was very deteriorated. It was identified by the sweater wrapped around her torso, which her mother had asked her to wear when she left home on November 28, 2003. There were signs of knife attacks on the body, but the investigation revealed that the cause of death was strangulation. On July 3, 2004, a man went on a trip with his wife and daughter. During the trip, he noticed something tied up and kicked it. After the kick, the woman's skull was exposed. The family returned to the city and informed the police. Based on the skull, an attempt was made to reconstruct the woman's face, but her identity was never determined. From 1998 to July 2004, several bodies had been found. However, the police had neither evidence nor witnesses to catch the killer. Eventually, the day came when the killer was finally caught by the police for the first time. Maria Shumilova, known as Masha, was 31 years old and walked with a crutch due to a broken foot. On the night of June 18, 2004, she was celebrating her birthday with a friend. She spoke to her mother at 10:50 p.m. and told her that she was on her way home, but after that, she was never heard from again. Her mother filed a missing persons report on July 7, 2004, when Maria's sister revealed that Maria had been working as a sex worker for several months. Shumilova's body was never found. On the night she disappeared, a new SIM card was inserted into her phone, which was registered under the name Yevgeny Chaplinsky. When he was arrested, he claimed to be a taxi driver and said that two young men, whom he had given a lift to, had left the phone in his car. However, when an official statement was taken, Chaplinsky changed his story. Yevgeny Chaplinsky was a retired police officer, and he knew that if he mentioned giving a lift to the two young men, the police would create a problem for him, and he would get further involved in the case. For this reason, he changed his statement and claimed that the young men had tried to rob him, but failed, and while fleeing, the phone fell into his taxi. The investigators did not consider Chaplinsky's changing statements important, and he was later released. Here, the police displayed negligence because the real serial killer was Yevgeny Chaplinsky. If the police had properly interrogated him and conducted a thorough investigation, it might have prevented further murders. Now let us tell you who this serial killer, Yevgeny Chaplinsky, was and what his story was. Yevgeny Chaplinsky was born on March 14, 1965, in the city of Novosibirsk. There is limited information about his early life, but he graduated from school with average grades and enrolled in a mechanical engineering college in 1981. During his education, he was an active member of the Komsomol. Between 1984 and 1987, he served in the Soviet border troops, where he received physical, ideological, and combat training, and became proficient in Sambo, a martial art. His peers considered him someone who took every opportunity to make a good impression on his officers. After his military service, he joined the police force and rose to the rank of sergeant. He initially worked as a security guard in the Kirovsky district and was later transferred to the Leninsky district in 2000. In 2003, he retired with a Medal for Distinguished Service, 46 commendations, and recommendations for excellent performance. After retirement, with the help of his wife's parents, he started a chain of stores selling metal wall decorations. He was married 3 times, had 2 children, and supported Vladimir Putin's United Russia Party. In 1998, Chaplinsky bought a Lada Samara car and began working as a taxi driver to earn money. In December of that year, he committed his first murder, and the discovery of bodies began. Now let's return to the story. On October 2, 2004, a young couple was preparing shashlik in a suburban area of Novosibirsk. During the meal preparation, the man decided to head towards a nearby forest. There he found a pair of jeans with the feet tied with wire. When he picked up the jeans, a human head was discovered inside. The couple immediately stopped a road patrol officer and reported the horrifying discovery. The woman's identity was confirmed years later in 2009. Genetic samples were taken from her mother, which helped identify the remains as those of 19-year-old Anna E. Anna had left home in 2000 and started working as a sex worker. She was reported missing in the fall of 2004. On June 11, 2006, two young men found a cellophane bag in the bushes. The bag seemed suspicious, and when they opened it, a human skull was found inside. Interestingly, these two men had been in the area for 7 days, but at that time, there was no bag there. Subsequently, during the investigation, other human remains were found at the same location, including 6 separate cranial bones, a humerus, 15 ribs, and a long bone. Investigators analyzed all the remains and determined that they belonged to the same genetic profile. The victim was estimated to be between 27 and 32 years old, but their identity remains unknown to this day. Interestingly, Chaplinsky later claimed that he had murdered this victim during the winter of 2002 or 2003, although this claim has yet to be confirmed. In 2006, when all the cases were compiled together, several circumstantial pieces of evidence pointed towards Chaplinsky. Particularly in the case of a murdered woman, Chaplinsky had claimed that he had never met her, but investigations revealed that she was a sex worker and was familiar with him. Additionally, colleagues who worked with Chaplinsky also reported rumors that he ran a protection racket involving sex workers, especially in areas where some of the murders had taken place. Based on this evidence, Chaplinsky was arrested. During further investigations and witness testimony, authorities learned that in 2000, Chaplinsky had been forced to change his workplace due to these rumors. Some sex workers claimed that after they were questioned by the authorities, Chaplinsky would later interrogate them to find out what they had said. A police dog was used to search one of his homes and a garage, but no solid evidence was found and no bodies were recovered from those locations. Due to the lack of evidence, Chaplinsky was released. The killer managed to escape police custody once again. As easily as Chaplinsky was taken into police custody, he managed to outsmart them and slip away just as effortlessly. After June 11, 2006, no more bodies or human body parts were found, and the discovery of remains ceased in 2006. Some police officers believed that the killer was either dead or had been incarcerated for another crime. While the bodies and body parts stopped appearing, the police never stopped working on the case. Some officers were determined to catch the killer at all costs. In October 2015, investigators arrested a taxi driver, Alexei Ivanov, who was suspected of being the Novosibirsk killer. After his arrest, Ivanov confessed to several unrelated murders and was convicted for those crimes. However, further investigations revealed that he was not involved in the Novosibirsk killer's murders, and he was cleared of the charges. In 2016, the investigative committee began conducting DNA tests and collected samples from all suspected individuals, including Chaplinsky. The test results revealed that semen found at one crime scene and sweat found at 2 other crime scenes matched Chaplinsky's DNA. With this evidence, on April 23, 2016, Chaplinsky was arrested and charged with 17 murders. In January 2017, after a psychological and mental evaluation, Chaplinsky was deemed mentally stable. During the investigation, he confessed to killing 29 women, but on April 14, 2017, only 19 murder charges were filed against him, as there was insufficient evidence for the other cases. Later, Chaplinsky retracted his confession. Over the course of the investigation, more than 8,000 people were questioned in connection to the case. On February 28, 2018, the jury found Yevgeny Chaplinsky guilty of 19 murders and 1 theft, sentencing him to life imprisonment in a correctional labor colony. However, on September 28, this decision was overturned and the case was sent back to court because the statute of limitations had expired for some of the cases. Under Russian criminal law, the statute of limitations for murder is 15 years. 2 months later, in a second trial, Chaplinsky was once again found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. As of September 2019, Chaplinsky is serving his sentence in the Snezhinka labor colony, located in a village in Elbin, Khabarovsk Krai. Between 2000 and 2003, the following details were found regarding the women who were victims. On April 1, 2000, 2 severed hands were discovered, but the authorities were not informed. On April 21, 2000, another individual found a woman's head, and it was determined that the head and the hands belonged to the same person. The remains were later identified as those of Svetlana S., a sex worker. On April 17, 2000, pedestrians discovered her torso with the chest area removed. On May 27, 2000, two schoolboys found a severed leg. These same boys discovered the second leg on June 9, 2000, but no other body parts were found. Investigators identified this victim as woman number 7, but her true identity remains unknown. On April 20, 2000, a schoolboy from the 5th grade discovered a woman's head in a garbage dump near the LSIB factory. Initially, he thought it was a mannequin and used it to scare his friends, who then recognized it as a real human head. This was the head of 21-year-old Svetlana S., different from the one found on April 1, 2000. She had left technical college to work as a sex worker. Her last known action was visiting a client on January 19, 2000, but 4 different witnesses confirmed that she left her apartment alive. Irina B., 31, a mother of a 12-year-old boy, went missing in late January 2001. She was found dead from asphyxiation on March 16, 2001. Her limbs and head had been severed, and initially, only her torso was found. In this case, Choplinsky had wrapped her body parts in newspaper and buried them. Investigators took a month to reconstruct her face to identify her. Unlike many other victims, Irina B. was a deputy chief editor at a special accounting firm. She often went out in the evenings and was a trusted employee. On April 7, 2001, 2 teenage boys discovered the severed head of an unidentified woman number 10 inches. Although the victim was strangled, it was not possible to confirm if strangulation was the cause of death, as the autopsy did not confirm whether the act occurred before or after death. On March 28, 2002, 3 10-year-old boys discovered a woman's severed head wrapped in a man's shirt. It had been severed posthumously and was never identified, being referred to as woman number. 11th woman number 12, whose identity remains unknown, was discovered on April 19, 2003, by 2 brothers. While collecting firewood, one brother found a bundle that caused the severed head to fall out. 6 days later, a blood-stained bag with clothing was found nearby, and the genetic evidence from the clothing matched the severed head. On May 1, 2003, another severed head of a woman named Svetlana A. was discovered, but her other body parts were never found. She had been missing since April 15, 2003, and was working for an escort agency,